continue to write them. For me, today, this is going to be all new because I have not had the privilege of reading any of these authors, which is kind of unusual. This is the first time I've ever been on a panel where there was not a single author that I hadn't read yet. So I'm going to learn from each of you as we go along. I'm going to let's start on the end with Mr. Scarano. Is that correct?
Scarano.
Okay, and we're going to allow you to introduce yourself, please, and tell us a little about your book, sir.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm Gary Scarano. My book is The Jesus Gospel. Wouldn't you like to read one book about Jesus and not four? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. When I first started going to church, I said, why is there 4 books? I just want to read the one story. So it took me 30 years to put this all together into one story. So now you have the biography of Jesus. It's pretty interesting because you just read it right through and everything is ordered and everything is word for word from the Bible. I didn't put any of my words in there. So it's just from the Bible. It just tells the story of Jesus. There's a lot of little interesting tidbits like, when Jesus was resurrected and he went to go see the 11 apostles, who was missing? That's an interesting question. A lot of people say it was Judas.
Use to hold the mic up like this.
Oh.
Yeah.
But it was really doubting Thomas. We know that, right? So that means Judas was still alive? Interesting question. So there's a lot of interesting questions. I don't say what's true or not. I just raise the questions and bring them up. But if it's a simple story to read about Jesus, by the way, this has never been done before. Since the Bible was written, the first time anybody's combined all 4 books. That's it in a nutshell. JesusGospel.com is my website. JesusGospel.com. I'm also a reporter. I report for the national news site, Joe Hart. Anybody heard of Gateway Pundit? Conservative news site. And I report on current events from a Christian perspective. So that's also what I do. Underdog Report. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Stagger, let's go to you, please, sir.
Hello there. My name is Jim Staggers. I'm a retired Chief Operating Officer from a Fortune 500 company. My loving partner and I just were blessed with our age being in the late 80s to return from a 70-day camping trip through Alaska. We drove 15,642 miles in those 70 days. And as I write in my book, Ride With Us, every day when you're out traveling and camping is a new adventure. When you're at home, most of the time, you're in a routine and you do a lot of the same things. But when you're traveling for 70 days, you meet new people, you have new experiences. And as we traveled, I would dictate to my loving partner what I felt, what I saw, and what each experience was. And then every evening or the next morning, I would expand upon that, which then became this 100-page story of our bucket list adventure. When you're traveling and going into a different campground every night, it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to find when you pull into a campground you've never been in before. And all of that we have related in this book that was just published a week ago. So it's hot off the press.
I just forgot to say one minor thing. I did get one African-American Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court Justice to recommend this book, and he did write a review, Clarence Thomas, and so I'm very happy to say that.
Okay, go right ahead. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I am Jude Williams Newton, retired United States Air Force, 23 years. I'd like to say, okay. Yeah, because no one else stood up in the panel, so it's okay. But for the Air Force, thank you. I'd like to say, this book that I wrote for 10 years old, the baby heart doctor should be in every house of everyone in this room and others who are not. Before I say anything about the book, I'd like to preface that I started to write about my dad, who was a supercentenarian. Supercentenarian, to those who don't know, is someone over 110 years old. He was a breath of personality, a breath of fresh uniqueness. He really died. He died 2 years ago at 111. I have so much information on him because to live that long, even 100, how many people know someone over 104 or 105 or 106? But his life is so interesting, and I have information. I have voicemail, I have journals he wrote. Every time I visit him in Barbados, I'd record. So I have all that information, but it's so much of it all over, and I cannot consolidate it all. I started to write one chapter where he'd gotten a ticket riding a horse down the way he lived. And that chapter was interesting, but then I got stuck. And I figured, well, let me write a children's book. So the way this came about was that I saw a movie 10 years ago about a Black historical hero who did great for babies in the 1940s, born with blue baby syndrome, where oxygen was not getting to their hearts. So I figured I'd do a children's book. It would be a lot less inundating. But you know what? Writing any book is really not a simple feat, because I found out from working on this, it was quite a project. But I got it finished last March, and that's when it was published. So it's sort of fresh off the press as well. Nevertheless, it's about a Black historical hero who started off as a janitor and rose to the prominence of a doctor to become an expert in baby heart surgery. And that's all I have to say about that until I get other questions. But it needs to be in your libraries. Thank you.
Please go right ahead.
Grand Rising, everyone. My name is Levita Hayes. I'm actually here. I'm from Daytona Beach, Florida. Native Daytonian, yes indeed. And my book my company is Living Legacies with Levita. And the reason why I came up with that name, Living Legacies with Levita, is because of my father. Many of you knew him, Edward Creamy Hayes, here from Daytona Beach. And what happened when he passed away is when I saw him bring together so many of the community, different backgrounds, different cultures is what he brought together. And he was an educator too. And once I retired back in 2014, 37 years with the federal government, my background was in finance. That is what I have been doing. My mother and father had a restaurant, so they actually had me as the cashier. So little did I know, that was my background. That is what my background was going to be. So when I actually wrote this book here, it really brought back memories of what my father taught me. And what he taught me was all about savings, number one, okay? And on that cash register, he taught me about the value of money. No more than, it was during that time when you didn't have to, when you run cash register, you actually had to count the money. You actually had to count, make change.
Make change.
Make change, exactly. That's right. So in this book, we talk about savings. We talk about investments. We talk about life insurance. We talk about the Rule of 72. Why? Because those are so important in your life, and what you're able to do is color at the same time, because coloring brings back memories when you just sit back and you relax and enjoy. So with this coloring book, it makes the concepts of finances so much easier to understand. Thank you.
And you're right about making change. Do not go into the store now and get one of these cashiers a $20 bill, and they say your bill is $14 and 10 cents. Do not give them $20 and a dime, because you confuse the heck out of them. It takes them 35 minutes to figure out. All they need to give you is the change of the $20 bill. You giving them the dime. So you're right. Finance is key. It's key. Back down on the image run. You took the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and combined them all together and made one story. Now I know in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they basically wrote the same story, but they wrote them differently because everybody's version of what happened is different. How did you combine those to make it one story, to make it not seem like it was written by four different men in the gospel, but by one person?
Because there's four different books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are written from different perspectives. Let me give you an example. When you go look up Barry Bonds, right? What do you see listed first? His most significant accomplishments are listed first. Or Willie Mays. They're all listed first. And then there's other things that are listed. So certain books like the Bible do the same thing. So like for instance, the book of John is written from Jesus Christ as the Son of God, the part of the Trinity. He's written in that perspective. But the Gospel of Mark is written from his point of view as just a human being. So it's the shortest book, and a lot of other things aren't put there. So they put things in different order. All I did was took the same events, but that were in totally different order, and put them together into one story. And I did it. I in my table of contents, I have one page. I show every verse where they go on every verse. So in other words, the simple thing is, I just wanted to read one story about Jesus, not four, and not jump around and try to figure out this happened here. So it's just a simple story. And if you ever want to look up the verses, every verse is chronologized. Plus, I've got 225 questions and answers in the back.
Sometimes questions and answers are what you need. You may want to read that questions and answers before you read the book.
You know, actually, I tell people, go to chapter 20, because 1/3 of the Gospels is from the whole book. 1/3 is from the Last Supper to his resurrection. So it's like his life goes in slow motion. So the first third of the book is years. The second third of the book is months. And the last third goes days and seconds. Like for instance, the whole, when you combine the four Gospels, specifically about Pilate, it's a whole chapter. It's like, whoa, so many things are in here. So you find out all these little details, like when they came to arrest Jesus, it was with 1,000 people. 1,000 people, because they were afraid that he had an army. They didn't know much about him. So there's a lot of little details like that. Fun stuff.
Thank you. You in this RV, all the miles. Good gracious, good gracious, good gracious. What was the most exciting RV camp you pulled into? Where did you have the most problems? Or was there a place that you got in and they didn't allow your dog, or you couldn't have the right setup to hook up to the RV camp? Tell us about that.
Yes, the question is regarding experiences in campgrounds, both good and bad. Probably the most pristine campground that we stayed in, and we always try to make reservations in state parks, because in state parks you have much more privacy. The vehicles are separated such that you're not feeling like you're in someone else's yard. So when possible, we stay in state parks. And probably the most pristine one that we stayed in was on a river, a rock-infested river, in Montana, where we were parked right beside the water, and could totally feel like we were in the wilderness and enjoying nature. And we did see quite a bit of nature. My lady, her biggest concern was coming in contact with a grizzly bear. And we saw some grizzly bears, but they weren't really interested in getting too close to us. Probably the most depressing campground that we're in was a campground where when I went up to register, and I had already paid my money and still needed to go register, they told me that I did not have a registration and that there was not any space available. So it took a bit of conversation and raising my Marine Corps hat in order to get that circumstance reconciled.
That was not a pretty conversation, I take it. The grizzly bears were probably afraid of you as you were them, I take it.
Well, I didn't ask them.
I was just checking on those grizzly bears. Okay, Miss Newton, you say this is a book that everyone should have in their home, in their school. Why? Is it because of what it's dealing with, or what it's going to teach us?
Yes, all those things, what it's going to teach you, and it has great information. It's a children's book, but like my sister and cousin say, it's a book for everybody, and I say that too, because it's about a prominent Black historical person who started off poor, a janitor in Louisiana, and rose to prominence teaching doctors heart surgery. And not to say a whole lot in the book, but during that time in the 40s, he wasn't allowed to do surgery, so he would stand over, he was a Black doctor who was trained by a white doctor, became prominent, more knowledgeable than anyone else, so he'd stand over the shoulders of white doctors where they performed the surgeries on the babies to heal their hearts. So it's a prominent story that everyone should know. For children, it's a chapter book, so they can read good information, health information, and for adults, because it's a character they've probably never heard of, and they can see his line from where he moved from poverty to prominence. This idea came to me actually when I was a substitute teacher after I retired. And when I go to the schools, the elementary schools, that's where I substituted, I'd see books about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and heroes we already knew, and athletes who had their bios in these libraries, but not about other people. And Vivian Thomas, that's his name, Vivian Thomas, he became Dr. Vivian Thomas way after his craft. He made a mark, and he should be featured in any library, in every school library. So the books that were there were people we knew, but we need other characters to be included in these libraries, especially in schools on the elementary level. And that's why it's for 7 to 10-year-olds.
And I truly understand that, because as a retired educator, as a retired librarian, I found it hard finding books written by us, for our children, when I was in the library system. I had a budget, but there were a lot of times when I could not find books to bring in with melanated children that looked like me in the school system that I was in.
Yes.
So thank you. And his name was Dr. Vivian.
Yes, and I should have mentioned that even the character of the book, Dr. Vivian Thomas, is a Black doctor who came from a poor family and rose to prominence in the world and the U.S., of course.
And his complete name?
Dr. Vivian Thomas.
Dr. Vivian Thomas.
V-I-V-I-E-N, if you
Okay.
look him up.
I'm
There's
gonna
a
be going
movie
on.
about him, actually.
Okay, a documentary or a regular movie?
A regular movie. That's where I got the idea.
Thank you, Doctor.
Most of you probably have seen it.
Well, that's new to me. I will be looking that one up when I get home. Miss Hayes, had somebody told me about saving money when I was 8, I could probably be a billionaire today at this stage of my life. But we didn't learn, or I didn't learn those things as a child coming up. You know, you got everything from your parents. You went to mama, you went to dad, and you asked. You didn't know that they were poor. You didn't know that they were scraping to get you that new pair of shoes and to make sure you got that band uniform. How young do you suggest the parents start teaching children about saving and using this money and starting their financial life?
Wow. I would say that you start that child off as soon as they can say 1. Okay? As soon as they can say 2. When they can start counting, that's when you start that child mindset because it's all about putting that mindset of savings in that young child's mind, okay? If they know one, start having them to save 1 cent, okay? Just 1 cent. When they go to 5, 10, 15, start having them to save in a jar, because what that'll do is start them thinking about savings, that mindset, and also when you see them, when that money starts growing, okay, they don't really know that much about banks, but they can see just in a jar or a piggy bank, right? Remember the piggy banks? Having that money just grow and save they can do it on a weekly basis if you give them an allowance. So I would say as soon as they can count, start off with 10 cents, 5 cents. I think we talked about that the other day. That you
Talked
were
about the
saving,
dimes the other
right,
day,
you were
yes.
saving dimes, right? Save dimes, you know. So just get them in that habit and mindset. That's the key early on, because that is going to stay with me, stay with them, I feel, forever.
And we did talk about the dimes, but as I stated then, it was a project for myself. I had this jar, and I wanted to see how many dimes I could put in it, and what would be in it, what would be the total when I finished. And I'm still trying to fill that jar. It hasn't gotten to the top yet. But I promise you, when it gets filled and I count it, I'm gonna send you a note, tell you how much was in it.
That would be
how much
great.
did I have in those dimes? I've been doing it now. This about a year. I've been dropping dimes in there. It's a nice return, but I'm determined to fill it to the top with just dimes.
And I would say my daughter, because early on, we taught her how to save. And recently, I would say about 2 or 3 years ago, she's like, Mom, I've started saving like $5. So whenever she would have change to break and get $5, right, and save that $5. So I told her, like, okay, we're on a challenge together. And to do that, and it's unbelievable how much you can save. Just putting, if you break money, put that $5 away. We had over like $300, okay, saved up just in 1 year, okay?
Just with the $5 away.
Just with the $5. And sometimes it's so funny, right? When I would change, I was like, no, I don't want a 5. I don't want a 5. I don't want a 5. But I had to think about that mindset about saving that $5 bill.
Because you knew that $5 bill was supposed to go in that jar, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, very much. Do we have any questions from the audience for any of these ladies and gentlemen? Okay, I see your hand over here. Okay, hold on just a second. He's going to bring you the mic.
The only 3 of the Gospels were the same, and that was Matthew, Mark, and Luke. They were synoptic, meaning they had the same approach. However, John did a different approach, and he brought Jesus down because he was sitting on the right-hand side of his Father in heaven. So you can't put them all 3 together. The first 3 are synoptic, but John is different. Do we agree?
Well, John is different. He's not a synoptic gospel, because what you do is you find that Matthew, Mark, and Luke have many, many common events at different times. But John has different events. So those events go in between. Believe it or not, there's only about 20 events that John have that's common with the other 3. And those are 20 events. You'll see those 4 books all together, those verses together. So yeah, John will be in between.
John is different.
I can't hear her.
John is different. 3 are synoptic. You can't put all 4 of them together. That is from my perspective.
That's fine. I understand your perspective. I didn't put them together. I just put them together in a timeline so
Okay.
that they're not combined, but they're combined. It's the life of Jesus, the biography of Jesus. It had to happen at some time. So I put them together in a timeline.
I think what we're getting at is that today, this is going on here today, but somewhere else, something else is going on.
Exactly.
And then on the north side of town, something else going to, so we can put all of those things, because they all happen the same day.
Yes.
Am I understanding?
Right, but then they're
correctly?
combined. It's not
Right,
the
that's
same
right.
events, it's
But you're
different
saying that on this day, John did this, did it, okay. Those who look out in the audience, I came from Georgia. You came from maybe she said she's from Daytona. You're from where? Pittsburgh. Okay, I could have done without that.
I'm Daytona too.
But my point is, we all ended up here at the same place at
Yes.
the same time, coming from different ways, and I think that's what your reference is.
Yeah, that's all
Am
I'm
I
saying.
correct?
I hope that answers your question, man.
Are there any more questions? Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for speaking, and thank you for enlightening us on things that we may not have known, because I think we learned something from each of you. I'm staying away from the bears. Okay? I'm staying away from the bears. I'm gonna finish filling my dime, and I'm gonna read about Dr. Vincent, and I'm gonna share your book. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.